Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hey, I hope you're looking forward to our Preterist Pilgrim Weekend 2021. It will be in July. We're going to be announcing the details coming up very shortly. Got a great lineup of speakers for you, and our theme this year is the book of Revelation as the fulfillment of God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, resulting in salvation for the nations. Now, that's a long title, and yet it's absolutely full of good news. So, be looking forward to that. And I know we've got William Bell, we've got Scott Fisher, we've got Daniel Rogers, Larry Siegel. I know I'm forgetting, Al Prashon, and some guy named Don Preston, whatever he is. But anyway, be looking forward to this. It's going to be great. I can tell you that. It's going to be rich. It's going to have tons and tons of good material in it. So you want to be tuning in. And of course, it will be live streamed. It'll be free of charge. Any contributions will be gladly accepted to help us out with the cost that is involved in this. But nonetheless, it will be live streamed, and then it will be archived, of course, where you can access it later on and watch it at any time at your own convenience. So again, be looking forward to that. Okay, here we are, and we have been spending a good bit of time in our investigation of the Olivet Discourse. We have been focused for this good long while on the parable of Matthew 25:31 and following. This parable of the coming of the Son of Man for the wedding. And I believe I've demonstrated beyond any successful refutation that this parable of the wedding is based squarely on God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, and that therefore any interpretation of the parable that places it outside of God's covenantal promises to Old Covenant Israel, which is precisely, ladies and gentlemen, what the amillennial and the postmillennial world does. They see Matthew 25, 1-13 as a promise concerning the so-called end of time. They see it as a promise of Christ coming to marry the church, having nothing to do with Old Covenant Israel. Now, there are some notable exceptions to this and some massive self-contradictions within those paradigms as they struggle to deal with the issue of the marriage of the Lord. Was the Lord married to the church at Pentecost or simply betrothed? Does he not marry the church until the end of time? If that's true, then how are children born to that relationship? And on it goes. But of course, the foundational issue is that Matthew 25, 1-13 is really about God's faithfulness in fulfilling his Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. If and when we overlook that foundational fact, we are almost guaranteed to have a wrong view of eschatology, and most assuredly, a wrong view of the Olivet Discourse. Now, as I've shared with you, and today, what I'm doing is I'm essentially summarizing what we have seen in our study so far of Matthew 25, 1-13, and today and tomorrow will both be summaries of our examination of the parable of the wedding and what it means, how important it is for our understanding not only of the Olivet Discourse, but of eschatology as a whole. I think you've gotten a little bit of the taste of that as we have proceeded, as we have examined this parable, as we have examined the subject of the wedding. And God's promise that in the last days, he would remarry Israel. I will betroth you to me again. Hosea 2:19 and following. Well, you know, if he had never been betrothed to her in the first place, never been married to her, then he couldn't marry her again. And yet, that's very clearly what he said he was going to do. Now, with that bit of introduction, I want to begin today to go back over the territory, and that's why this summary will take 2 videos. All right? I want us to keep in mind, first of all, that Jesus said, "Do not think that I am come to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Verily I say unto you," and that statement, "verily I say unto you," is from a Greek term, amin lego humin. And as scholars have noted, this is just about the strongest affirmation that could be made by a Greek speaker or writer. It calls attention to what is about to be said that's going to emphasize and drive home what has just been said. Do you catch that? So here is Jesus affirming that his mission was to fulfill the law and the prophets. By the way, not just the law and the prophets. Now that's critical, folks. So Jesus affirms, he told them and he tells us that his mission was to fulfill the law and the prophets. And verily I say unto you, remember, calling attention to what he's about to say, that will emphasize what he has just said. Not one jot, until heaven and earth passes away. Not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it is all fulfilled. Now, once again, we're dealing with the law and the prophets. And we have to ask ourselves in this regard, is the prophecy of the wedding, is the prophecy of the coming of the Lord for the wedding a part of the law and the prophets? And the answer to that is an unequivocal yes. And let me simply point out, oh boy, I don't know how I'm going to get a summary in 2 videos, but we're going to try. First of all, you have to understand that Israel's feast days commemorated Yahweh's marriage to Israel. The giving of the law at Sinai was always viewed historically within Judaism, undeniably, as the time of his marriage to Israel. Some say his betrothal. And here's what's absolutely fascinating. The language that is used in Exodus 19 and 20, Exodus 19 specifically, the Hebrew terms that are used, as Yahweh instructed Israel to prepare herself to receive the law, the language that was used is marital language. It is wedding language. It conveyed the idea that Yahweh was entering into a marriage covenant with Israel at Sinai. Well, that's critical. It is vitally important that we understand that particular issue. Okay, so we're going to move forward. Israel was married to Yahweh, but the 10 northern tribes apostatized, serving other gods, Baal specifically, the Ashtaroth. And in Hosea chapter 2, the Lord said, "You are not my wife, I am not your husband." Now notice he didn't say, you've never been my wife, you've never been my husband, I've never been your husband. And by the way, what is critical to see in this reality is that Yahweh told Hosea to go and marry a daughter of whoredoms. To marry her. 3 children were produced to that union. That last child was named Not My People. And Yahweh told Hosea to put her away for her infidelity, to divorce her. And what happened with Hosea was a living parable of the relationship between Yahweh and Israel. Just like Hosea married Gomer, she became unfaithful, he divorced her. Yahweh was married to Israel, she became unfaithful, he divorced her. Oh, but, here's where we get into Matthew 25. The Lord promised that in the last days, number one, he would make a new covenant with the 10 northern tribes and with all the tribes of Israel. And he said that in those last days, I will make a new covenant, I will betroth you to me again in righteousness. I will betroth you to me forever. Here is that promise of Yahweh remarrying Israel in the last days. Now notice, when he put her away, notice that Yahweh said, number one, he divorced her. Number two, he departed. Hosea chapter 5:15 and following, I will depart and go back to my place until they repent. So at the divorce, God not only put her away, but he divorced departed from the 10 tribes. Not literally, not visibly, not bodily, covenantally. And he put her to death. But he promised that when she would repent, and that's all about the righteous remnant, the Lord said, guess what he would do? He would return. He would remarry her. He would raise her from the dead. Hosea chapter 6. He will come to us. He will raise us up. And we will live in his presence. You see? Divorce, departure, death. Return, remarriage, resurrection. It's not literal physical, biological resurrection. It's covenantal resurrection back into the presence of God in a new covenant relationship, a new marriage. And thus, we must keep this in mind. And remember, when the Lord would remarry her, he would return. What's Matthew 25? The return of the Lord for the wedding. As R.T. France and W.D. Davies and several other scholars have noted, Jesus in his ministry very often associated himself not the same as the Father, but in the place of the Father, fulfilling the promises that the Father had made of what he would do in the last days, Jesus fulfilling those promises himself. That's precisely what Matthew 25, 1 and following, is all about. And look, I am completely and totally out of time. Don't forget, folks, the May 2021 U.S. orders only book special. Introductory price, regularly $21.95 on my brand new book, Circumcision in the New Creation ? Regularly $21.95 plus postage for the month of May 2021. U.S. orders only. Guess what? $17.95 post-paid. Going to save you $10. So go to my website, DonKPreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, tab right up at the very top. Order the book. You will be glad you did. Okay, we got more of our summary of Matthew 25, 1 to 13 on the flip side. I'll see you there.